we now turn our attention to boxing and the upcoming heavyweight fight taking place on the 12th of December 2020 between Anthony Joshua and Kubrat Pulev. Joshua's WBA, WBO, IBO and IBF titles will be on the line. So it's a big fight, there's a lot at stake. It's an interesting fight in terms of the betting. We've got Pulev 13-2 as an outsider, Anthony Joshua a 1-9 favourite, the draw 33-1. So as far as the bookies are concerned, it's a foregone conclusion that Anthony Joshua will win this one. I think that's, it's a fair enough kind of assessment. If we look at the records, Joshua has a much better record, beating the likes of Andy Ruiz twice, Povetkin, Joseph Parker, Carlos Takam, Klitschko, Dominic Brazil, Dylan White. He has a very good record, particularly at his age. So he's got a pretty formidable record. Pulev, on the other hand, his record isn't as deep. He has been in the ring with Klitschko. I think he's had a title shot a good few years ago. So that shows how experienced Pulev actually is. He's been around a while. And I think that's probably his biggest advantage in terms of his chances of winning, is that experience, which will stand him in good stead. He's used to the big stage. It's not going to overawe him, this event. Recently, he hasn't really fought anyone that great. He did have a good win over Hughie Fury. I thought it was a decent win against a young, up-and-coming, good fighter. Hughie Fury's a good fighter. He's very light on his feet. So it was good that Pulev, with the age difference, was still able to get the win in that fight, I think on the points decision. So that's probably his best recent win. He recently won by decision over Rydell Booker. That wasn't impressive, We would have expected Pulev to clear Rydell Booker out of there pretty quickly. It actually turned into quite an attritional fight. It went a bit longer than we would expect, and he won by decision. But yeah, recently, Bogdan Dinu, he hasn't got the names. Well, Klitschko's obviously a great name, but that was in a losing effort. Hughie Fury's a decent win. But no, Joshua definitely has the better record, and it's widely thought that he will win. Let's not also forget that Pulev also has Derek Chisora on his record in a winning effort, and also Alexander Ustinov, who's also a decent fighter at that time. So that's a creditable victory, but certainly in terms of depth and quality, Anthony Joshua's record is superior. So 1-9, let's get straight into it. On this channel we have a history of taking on Anthony Joshua, and it's usually on the basis of price, like the value, the odds that they put at him for winning. There's usually never value in betting it. And the second thing is, he's been proven to be vulnerable, I remember supporting Anthony Povetkin in terms of the betting option against Joshua. Obviously he lost. I can't remember the price exactly, but it was somewhere around 6-1. We've got a similar sort of price here on Pulev, 13-2. I think Povetkin might have been a bit more actually, 7-1. But yeah, Pulev 13-2, in that sort of ballpark. We've recently seen Alexander Povetkin, years after that losing effort against Joshua, knock Dylan White out cold. And he was the underdog in that fight. And it just shows you some of the value that's on offer in heavyweight boxing. And it also shows you what can happen and why. You can't just expect fights to go the way that they should go in the most sort of logical and, logical sort of scenario. You've got to look at what else can happen. It's sport. It's heavyweight, the concept of the puncher's chance and all these things can happen. Obviously, the common sense effort would be Joshua 1-9 to win. You've got Joshua to win by KO. They're offering you 4-9, which is, measly odds. If that happens, you might as well just let it happen and not bet. Just watch it, because 4-9 ain't going to get you far unless you're, getting the 4 and 5 figures out of your bank account and putting it all on the line. And I think we've seen with Joshua, he's already lost to Ruiz. That fight taught us a lot. It taught us that Joshua can be beaten. It taught us that anybody, who's operating at a high level or has operated at an elite level for a number of years, like a Povetkin, like a Pulev, like a Ruiz, you've got to take them seriously. You can't just think it's going to be a walkover. Joshua before, I remember he won on points against Parker. He did win. He won the fight. But I think Parker did pretty well in that fight. He wasn't in any danger of getting knocked out. He could have got the decision. Obviously, fighting in the UK, that wasn't likely to happen. And obviously, with Joshua's status as a cash cow in the business, it's very difficult to get a points victory over him. You're going to have to clear him out if you want to win, like Andy Ruiz did. But, yeah, you know, things can happen at heavyweight, and we've got to bear that in mind. Pulev is 39 now, Joshua's 31. So some people will have it that Joshua's the younger man, he's the more youthful man, comes in tremendous condition, always does. You know, that's obviously a big advantage for him. But at heavyweight, it's less than an advantage, you know. The last thing to go is your punch and all that. He's only 39 anyway. It's not like he's, you know, in his mid-40s or something. He's 39, he's still strong, still trains. If we're taking the fight seriously, you know, there's a big paycheck on the line. It's Pulev's last opportunity, I would have thought, you know, for a big win. So he's got to make it count. He's got to put it all on the line. He's going to have Bulgaria behind him. He's a pretty strong-willed guy anyway, from what we know about him, what we've seen in the past. Certainly in terms of the negotiations, Eddie Hearn was making him offers for years. And he never, you know, the big amounts of money didn't really do anything for him. You know, he's moved when he's ready to move. He's accepted the fight now. It's the right time for him. And yeah, a lot's on the line for him. He's got to have a big following, you know. He's got the Bulgarian nation behind him, and he's going to be putting it all in there. He went in there against Klitschko in a losing effort, so he will know how critical this fight is. I think the problem for Pulev is output of punches. The issue is he going to throw enough? Because he's usually quite a defensive fighter. He's an experienced fighter, he's a considered fighter. He's actually pretty reasonable technically from a heavyweight point of view. He's got a pretty stiff jab, he's got a great jab, and works behind that, can inflict a lot of damage like that, can assess range, get into range, move levels off of that jab. And it makes him an interesting proposition. Like Hughie Fury's a pretty good technical fighter. He lost to Pulev, so that tells you something. Joshua, obviously, in the second fight against Ruiz, won on points, and it was widely thought that it was a very good technical performance. I think it was a good in terms of strategy. You know, he basically got on his bike and stayed away from him because he saw what happened in the first fight. When Ruiz got up close, it wasn't a good result for Joshua, so he used his brain. Obviously, worked with Rob McCracken, worked on range, worked on footwork, worked on keeping distance. Ruiz didn't come in the best shape, which was unfortunate. Defending his world heavyweight title, he didn't come in the best shape. And it was widely thought that, you know, he spent too much time looking at multi-million-pound houses and buying Rolls Royces and things rather than actually getting in the gym and paying the price as he did in the first fight. So I don't think he came in at his optimal performance, but not to take anything away from Joshua. His strategy was on point, came in shape as he always does, and did a job on it. That sort of technique against Pulev is probably played into Pulev's hands because Pulev is good from range. Pulev has a good jab. Pulev, you know, he can jab with you for, you know, 11, 12 rounds, no problem. So if Joshua goes for that type of strategy against him, I think it could be risky. Could be risky. Obviously, if we look at the betting, Pulev on points is 20-1. So we're not. Well, firstly, we're not expecting him to get a decision fighting on an Eddie Hearn promotion. You know, with the biggest, arguably the biggest cash cow in the sport at stake. He's not likely to get a points decision from that point of view. And also, you know, Joshua's shown that in a long attritional battle, he often comes out on top, as he did with Parker, as he did with Andy Ruiz in that second fight. So, yeah, Pulev, looking at the odds there, so Pulev 20-1 points, that's not likely to happen. Pulev is going to need a knockout. So I hope he comes with that attitude. If he plays his usual defensive game, he'll probably get seen out in a unanimous decision. You know, Joshua he's quite considered, he's quite experienced now. And with that fight against Ruiz would have taught him a lot. He would have trained in a way which, you know, safety first way. And if they both have that sort of mentality, it's just going to be a boring Joshua points win at 4-9. But I think Pulev has got to put it on the line. I noticed against Rydell Booker, I looked at that fight and I thought it was a shame that he couldn't get rid of Rydell Booker. If he can't get rid of Rydell Booker, it's going to be very difficult to get rid of Anthony Joshua. But if he puts in a concerted effort, comes in shape, and comes with that mindset that's going to put it on him, then he might have a chance. I mean, if we look at Pulev's history, he lost to Klitschko. If you look at that fight, Klitschko put it on Pulev. So they were jabbing around, you know, assessing range, you know, seeking each other out with the jab, you know, playing a bit of chess. And in the end, Klitschko just went for him and caught him with a lovely shot, and that was the end of the fight. And, you know, hopefully Pulev will have learned something from that. You know, you don't get many of these big title fights. Klitschko went for him. He's got to go for Joshua at some point. It's no good. He has this. He puts his hands up and he assesses range with his left hand, with the jab hand, and he can sometimes spend a lot of time measuring his opponent and measuring range. He's actually got to do. He's going to do that anyway, but he's got to throw in some punches as well and get some output out there. It was easy enough for him to get some shots around Rydell Booker because a fighter of that level, you should be able to get your shots away. But the fact that he wasn't able to stop him is a bit of a concern. So in terms of the prices, to cut a long story short, I think there's a little bit of value for Pulev. I'm not saying he's going to win the fight. Joshua should win the fight, but 13-2, I think it's a reasonable enough price. I mean, Pulev, I would have it more, around sort of 4-5 to 1. That's how I would assess it. And if you're going to go on the outright market with Joshua at 1-9 and Pulev at 13-2, there is only one bet. You're not going to make a lot betting Joshua at 1-9. The two bets that I like in the fight are Pulev 13-2, just to win by any method. The second bet is Joshua by decision 7-2. The reason I like this one is, as I've gone into, Pulev is pretty defensive a lot of the time. He's got a lot of experience and he's used to going, 12 rounds. If Joshua wants to play a tactical fight, as he did in his last fight against Ruiz, could easily go to points. Again, bring up the Joseph Parker fight that went to points. Pretty tentative battle. No one really went for the knockout. No one really got in on the inside. No one was throwing uppercuts. It was all from range, jabs and sort of looping hooks from range. So if it's that sort of thing, I wouldn't be surprised if Pulev took him the distance. If it goes to points, there's only one winner, which is Anthony Joshua, for the reasons given previously. Work rate and the politics of the event. Him being a cash cow, it's an Eddie Hearn promotion and all the rest of it. So those are the two bets that I'm interested in. The one I'd probably side with, probably Joshua on points at 7-2. I think there's value in that. I think Joshua is the most likely winner. But as I've said, Pulev been around a long time. He has it in him to pull off an upset. I think Joshua's going to be a lot more careful though this time. Obviously, having lost to Ruiz, he knows what's at stake. He does prepare pretty well. He trains hard. I think he's someone who is thinking for the long term in the sport. He wants to have a good reputation for the entirety of his career and leave it with a sort of reputation like Klitschko, as someone who's like an ambassador in the sport. So he can't be losing fights like this. So he should be getting it done. I think, a lot of people, if you look at the betting, the bookies think it's going to be an easy win for him by knockout. Pulev could tire in the later rounds and get stopped. That wouldn't be a surprise at all. But the technique he has and the number of chances he takes are usually quite minimal. So it is possible that it could go long haul, and Joshua at 7-2 is a value. If Joshua wins by knockout, it's fine. 4-9, so what? But in terms of looking for value, I've got Joshua by decision at 7-2 as my main bet. But if you fancy a bit of Pulev, which, I wouldn't put you off, it can happen, 13-2 is a reasonable price. So those are my two selections. Enjoy the fight. Give any comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know where the value lies. It's fairly easy to say, Joshua's going to win. Well, it's 1-9 in the betting, so that's not, that's not a huge, no great shakes made there by predicting that one. But I think with Joshua on points at 7-2, found a little bit of value there. Enjoy the fight and see you next time.